Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, this is actually very highly requested and it is just a walkthrough 101 video of contouring. Now, if that's something that you are into or at any point feel like you could use some refresher on, make sure to keep on watching and please don't forget to subscribe. I do upload twice a week and that is the best way to stay up to date on all the fun stuff I am posting. So without further ado, let's get into this contouring 101 video. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, and I did prime my skin already, is you can kind of see where I naturally have some shadow. And now these are the areas that you're going to want to contour. And then when I turn my head, and keep in mind, no makeup is on right now, you see how right here, and on the nose, it's a little bit like shiny and glossy. Those are the areas you're going to want to highlight. So I'm going to start by going in with foundation. I'm taking the Makeup Forever Ultra HD Foundation Stick because this is super full coverage, and I'm using this one today because it is so full coverage that it's basically going to cancel out everything on my face. If you go in with a lighter coverage foundation, then you don't have to contour as much because obviously your natural features are showing through. Today we are basically eliminating all of my natural features and starting fresh. Okay, so my features are gone. There is no high point, there is no low point, there is just a blank canvas. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is brighten, which is your highlighting. I'm going in with C5 from Makeup Forever. This is the Conceal and Define concealer. And this is just gonna go anywhere you wanna kind of bring forward. So on the face, this area right here, the nose, the center of the forehead, the chin, and even the Cupid's bow, these are the areas you want to bring forward and you want to make them look more pronounced, whereas contour is going to provide like a shadow and that's going to kind of make things sink back a bit. So I really like to brighten the under eye. And you'll see I actually feather that towards the high point because this is the highest point. That's where I'm going to put a shimmery highlight, but this is just going to pull everything else forward. We're going to want to bring it to the tip of the nose, the Cupid's bow, the chin, and the forehead. And then again, we blend that out. And when I blend this out, I try and keep the most of that brightness exactly where I put it. And I try not to feather it out much. So like on the forehead, I will really try and keep it just in that triangle shape. And then I will take a little bit and just blend it into the rest. And this you'll see is brighter and it's pulling it forward. So it's making this area look bigger. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna deepen up here. So it's gonna make the forehead pronounced, but smaller. Brightening the tip of the nose is just gonna make it look a little bit smaller and a little more narrow. You'll notice when we brought the foundation here to the sides and we have the concealer on the nose, it's already slimming it down a little bit. My nose is big, no way around that. So when I brighten and contour, I just want to make it look a little bit slimmer and a little less pronounced. And then for the under eye, we want to focus the most of that concealer just to cancel out any discoloration on the under eye. And then we're going to blend that into the cheek. And what that's going to do is just allow this to be a little more bright. And once that's patted in, going back in with my foundation brush, I just kind of smooth all of that together and blend it into where my foundation meets the concealer. Now this is where you can either cream contour, powder contour, or both. Personally, I do not love cream contouring just because it gets a little bit harsh on me. I would rather go in with more bronzer and powder contour, but for the sake of today, I will be doing a little bit of cream contour. Now the items they market as cream contour, I don't necessarily love because I find that for me, they're a little too extreme as far as warm or cool. So I actually like going in with just a foundation that's a little darker than my shade. And what I'll do with a cream contour is, you see how right from the sideburn down, when you suck in the cheek, this is that line of where that contour would go. What I wanna do is I wanna take a little bit of this and I just wanna go a little bit above that area. Because if you go under that, it's gonna actually make the cheekbone sink down. If you go a little bit up, it's gonna cheat the eye and it's going to kind of help everything look a little bit more lifted. And by going with a foundation as opposed to a something else like a cream contour itself, this is gonna blend in much better with the entire face as a whole. So I know that looks kind of weird, and this is a little bit cool because I am gonna use this more of like a bronzer contour. Then I'm just going to blend that into the foundation, and you wanna blend it out and down. And what this is gonna do is this is gonna basically give us a guide of where we're gonna go in later on with the powder contour. And you always wanna blend up as opposed to down, because down is just going to drag the face down. And you notice how that's already giving a little more definition to the skin. It is a little warmer than one would normally go in with, but this is just for me the base, and I use it more of like a cream bronzer than a cream contour. And when I go over that with the powders, it's all gonna just look that much more pronounced. So before you go in with powders, you do wanna set everything with a powder. So I'm gonna be taking the Cody Airspun, and I'm basically just gonna be powdering the entire face with this, starting with the under eye. And the reason you wanna go in with a powder like this before you start going in with your powder contour and your powder bronzer is that if you just start going right in with your powders, it could grab weird to the foundation because the face is still a little bit tacky. So rather than having it grab, you want to lay down a thin layer of powder just to set everything in place. I say thin and then I go in really hard. You lay a thin layer of powder down, and then what this is going to do is it's going to give you a smoother application when you start to go in with your other powders. So now from a brightness standpoint, the under eyes are a little bit brighter than the contour area, and that's just bringing everything here forward, and this is kind of sinking back. Now, my cheekbone is actually here, but I contoured a little bit above it, just because that's gonna give you a little bit more of that lifted look. Now, I am brushing away any more of that baking powder before I go into a brightening powder and a contour powder. So I like to do bronzer before I contour. For years, I did it the opposite way. However, lately I've noticed that I get a much more defined look and I'm happier with it when I do bronzer first. So going in with my Aesthetica P12 and the Benefit Hoola bronzer, I'm gonna take just a little bit of that Hoola bronzer, and I'm just gonna go over any of those areas we contoured just to add a little more warmth to the face. And what that's also gonna do, you'll notice, is that's gonna help to continue to contour and define, but it's also gonna show us exactly where we wanna take our powder contour to intensify it so it doesn't get too intense or too muddy. Sometimes when you go in with your contour first and then your bronzer, your entire cheek area will just start to get very muddy when the colors start to blend together. So now that we have that done, we're gonna go in with our contour. I'm using the Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Palette. The reason I love this palette so much, and I've been raving about this since literally day one, is you get 3 brightening shades and 3 contouring shades. Now the reason that's helpful is that each of these brightening shades does something a little bit different. So if I was to take, starting with this shade down here, which has a little bit more of a pinky tone, it is cool tone. So if you place that under your eyes, it's going to kind of neutralize some of those blues, almost like a color corrector, and that's gonna make a little bit more of the dark circles disappear. Then you have this shade here, which is a little more true pink versus the peachy pink. And when you take this on the under eye, it's gonna mimic a little bit more of a brightness on deeper skin tones, medium skin tones, and the likes. And then for people like me who are pasty and pale, there is a very bright, almost banana powder. And this, when you take onto the under eye and onto the high points of the face, is really just gonna give you a whole lot of brightness, and it's really gonna smooth everything together. Now, I usually like to go in with all 3 under the eyes, and then I will take the middle brightening shade, and I will just take that anywhere we put the concealer. And you'll notice how that also really just ties in this area, pulling it forward, and then all of your contoured areas are still set back. So to contour the nose, I like to go in with a very cool tone medium shade, and I take that on, this is actually an eyeshadow brush, but I will take a little bit of that contour on that, and I will just run that down the length of the nose. When you contour your nose, you don't wanna just go all the way on the side and that's it. You actually wanna take it a little bit onto the bridge of the nose and then blend it out. Because if you just focus it on the side, it's just gonna look muddy. If you take that shadow a little bit onto the tip of the nose, That's what's really gonna help catch that light and make everything look a little more snatched and a little bit thinner. And I know that looks a little bit harsh, but then what I like to do is going into a powder foundation. This is the Studio Fix. I will take a little bit more powder and I will just dust over everything just to make it a little bit more natural, but you still have that really defined contour. Lately, I've really been enjoying the E8 from Morphe for contouring. This is actually a concealer brush, but I find that this is just perfect for a tiny little contour. Lately, I've been using a lot more bronzer and a lot less contour. It used to be the opposite. And the reason for that is that especially this time of year, everyone wants to look bronzy and warm and glowy. And contours usually, especially on me, really cool toned. So I'm actually gonna take a mixture of the medium 2 shades. Well, there's 3 shades. So I'm gonna take a mixture of the medium and the deep shade, mostly the medium, and then a drop of the deep, dust it off, and then just in that socket, I'm just going to buff a little bit of that contour into the hollow of the face. And you'll notice how that's not super extreme, but it is providing just a little soft amount of pigment, just where I want a little bit more definition. And then going back into the bronzer brush, I'm just going to buff all of that in together, and then a little bit more of that middle shade on the jawline. Now my forehead is not very pronounced, so if I went in with bronzer like I did, I don't normally have to go in with any additional contour. I'll just take whatever's left on the brush and really just connect it around the perimeters of the face, because that's what's gonna give you that very natural sun-kissed look. And the last part of contouring and highlighting is your shimmery highlight and your blush. So with a little bit of Luminoso from Milani, which is one of their baked blushes, on an angled brush, I'm gonna take my blush. I'm gonna take blush on my brush. I can't speak. And what I'm gonna do, I don't have anything on there yet, is I'm really gonna concentrate that right here, because a lot of people will take it on the apples of the cheeks and they'll do that smiley thing and they'll get these really rosy cheeks. And that's good if you wanna introduce color to your face. But from a contouring standpoint, adding a little bit of blush is just gonna take a little bit of that color and bring it back in, because the face is not normally like no pink, no red. So this is really what's gonna just take that color and bring it back to the face to make it a little more natural. And I will, after there's no product on the brush, take it down to the cheek and blend this whole piece out. But just to start, I concentrate it right here, because again, you go out in the sun, this is the area that gets very red, and then whatever's left on the brush, I will run it down the nose contour just to add a little of that pinkiness, because again, the nose is what usually gets hit by the sun. The last thing I do just to tie this whole thing together is, with no additional product left on my powder brush, I will just kind of pat everything together and give it a quick blend. And what that's gonna do is it's just gonna have everything kind of sit together and meld together. Now, before I like to go in with a shimmery powder highlighter, I like to set the face down. And the reason I do that, and today I'm using the Morphe Prep and Set, is that when I'm taking all these powders on the face and everything is just on top of the face, and then you go in and you start putting on a powder highlighter, what I find it'll do is it'll grab to some of the other powders, and I don't like that. I wanna kind of set everything in place, I leave it to let it dry, and then I come back in when there's no product on the face and everything is super smooth, and then I apply my powder. So I'm gonna give this a minute to dry and fan it off a bit, and I'll be right back to put on highlighter. And now we are ready for highlighter. So today I'm gonna be taking the Killawatt foil from Fenty Beauty. This is the new one, which is Sandcastle and Mint Mojito. So I'm really loving this lately. So I'm gonna take that on the Fenty Beauty Shark Tooth brush. And the way you wanna do your highlight is, you wanna really focus it on the cheekbone and then above the brow. And what that's gonna do, and you'll see how that catches the light, is that's just going to allow you to emphasize that high point above the contour even more than you already did with the brightened shade. Now, highlighting is kind of, I'm not gonna say a new technique because it's something that's been around for a while, but it hasn't been quite as huge as it was now because a matte brightening was enough. So you'll see how I have the sharp contour here and then the brightening goes here. I wanna take that highlighter right over that brightened area, and I will actually blend it down towards the bronzer as well, just so that that high point becomes really defined and really glam. Then I'm gonna add that same highlighter shade down the bridge of the nose. I'll take a little bit right over each of the brows, just to give me a little bit of where that natural shine would be. And then over the Cupid's bow. Last thing you do to keep all this in place is set it down one more time, and you are done. So I just threw on a light gloss and I didn't put anything on the eyes other than my brows and some concealer, just because I didn't want the eyes to take away from the face. I really wanted to just emphasize that this is exactly like perfect flawless skin, but with definition. So if I wanted to, like, you could totally make this a little bit darker. You can totally play around with the tones of it if you want to, but for me, I really like a warm bronzy contour and a super vibrant highlight. So I hope this was helpful and I hope you enjoyed. And if you have any questions, leave them down below. I do really well about checking comments. So I hope this did answer all of your questions. If you have anything else specific about contour or highlight or brightening, please leave it down below and I will make sure to answer them. And I will see you next time. Bye.